Welcome back to The Global Anchor, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the sometimes turbulent waters of international finance. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're tackling a question that is top of mind for millions of remote professionals and freelancers around the world. Is it financial armor or a fiscal trap to demand your salary in US dollars?
It's $1 million question, literally.
Exactly. And to guide us through this masterclass, we have back in the studio the brilliant financial strategist and economist, Jamie Chen. Jamie, welcome.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be back. This isn't just a technical question about currencies. It's really a deeply personal one about preserving the value of your effort.
Context, why the dollar question is urgent.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Preserving the value of your effort. Let's set the stage. Why is this topic so urgent right now? We see high inflation economies globally, and people who get a big raise or a new high-paying job, they feel that initial euphoria, thinking, finally, I can save.
Right. They feel that burst of prosperity. But if you live in an economy with, say, 50% or 100% annual inflation, that feeling dissipates incredibly fast. You look at your savings goal and it keeps drifting further away. That raise that felt big 6 months ago, it's just a temporary patch now.
It's the silent killer of wealth.
It is. It's the constant erosion of purchasing power, that financial menace we call inflation. And that's the primary reason professionals are asking, should I demand or at least accept my salary in USD? They're looking for a shield.
So they're not just chasing a higher number, they're running away from a negative force.
Precisely. And that brings us to why the dollar is so appealing as that shield. It's fundamentally tied to its status as the world's primary global reserve currency. It's the currency used for the majority of international transactions, from oil to global commodities.
That's the authority it carries. I love the analogy the source material used. Let's think of your local currency as a block of ice.
Yes, a perfect analogy.
No matter how hard you try to save that block of ice, it is constantly melting. That melting process is inflation, the continuous loss of value. When you keep savings in that currency, you are accepting the certainty that they will be worth less over time. Now, if you picture the dollar as a solid gold ingot, it might fluctuate slightly, currency volatility, but its fundamental structure is robust because it's backed by the world's largest, most stable economy. When you get paid in USD, you are transforming that ice into a solid ingot.
That's a very clear mental shift. And you mentioned extreme cases really drive this home. What's an example that shows the dollar's protective power during systemic chaos?
We can look at the Argentina convertibility crisis in 2001. Those who had dollarized savings, even though they suffered the corralito, the banking restriction, they still protected a substantial part of their purchasing power, especially for international goods and long-term assets. In stark contrast, those who only held pesos were left with severely devalued local currency. It serves as a powerful, real-world lesson.
That makes the case for value preservation undeniable. So beyond the shield effect, what are the other two major benefits of earning in dollars?
One is simply transaction ease. If you make international online purchases, pay for global software subscriptions, or travel overseas, you bypass costly double conversions. The second, and arguably most important for long-term growth, is global investment access. It significantly simplifies your entry into foreign trading markets, global stocks, or bond investments. You're already denominated in the right currency.
Right. So economically, the case is clear. But as you know, Jamie, money rarely moves without the government having a say. Let's pivot to the legal and fiscal maze. Many people mistakenly believe that money coming from abroad is invisible to their local tax authority.
Nothing could be further from the truth, and this is where expertise becomes crucial, because misunderstanding this can lead to massive, costly issues. You must inevitably perform a conversion to pay your local expenses, rent, utilities, food, which means you are exposed to exchange rate risk.
Let's use a simple example of that exposure.
Say the official exchange rate is 1 USD to 100 units of your local currency. If bank regulations or taxes force you to use a rate of 95 units on conversion day, you've immediately lost 5% of your income. That's a silent cost, a tax you pay simply for converting.
And then there's the notorious situation in some countries with strict currency controls, where people might turn to the black market or the blue dollar.
Yes, and while operating outside the legal financial circuit can multiply your purchasing power in the short term, you must be extremely cautious. Operating outside the law for your salary can lead to severe legal and criminal consequences. The risk is simply not worth the short-term gain.
The real danger, though, is the tax trap. Tell us about the declaration process.
This is the most delicate point, Alex. A dollarized salary is not exempt income. You must declare it. Most tax agencies require you to convert that income to the local currency at a specific, often official exchange rate on the date the income was received. If you get audited, you need meticulous records to prove that conversion rate.
I imagine that if you hold the dollars in foreign bank accounts or as physical savings, those assets become visible to the government in other ways too.
They do. They can be subject to wealth or personal property taxes, depending on the exemption limits of your nation. The crucial takeaway is an undeclared dollarized income today can generate a massive tax debt with exponential interest and penalties. Fiscal discipline is non-negotiable.
That's powerful advice. So the action item here is simple. Consult an accountant specializing in international taxation. Don't assume you know the rules.
Exactly. Professional expertise will save you tremendously costly problems. Maintain a meticulous spreadsheet of every payment date and the exact exchange rate your tax entity requires.
Emotional and psychological insights. We've established the dollar is a shield, but it also creates its own set of internal challenges. Let's talk about the risks associated with the safe haven currency itself and the psychology of holding it. I like the analogy. If the dollar is a solid ship, remember that it is not an island.
That's very reflective. The ship sails on a global ocean and is subject to waves and storms. First, there are the silent costs of conversion. I call them the silent vampires.
Oh, tell me about the vampires.
When your employer transfers your USD payment, the full amount rarely arrives. The vampires are the SWIFT fees for the international transfer, the intermediary or correspondent banks that take a small cut along the way, and finally the bank spread, the difference between the price the bank buys the dollar at wholesale and the price they sell it to you at retail.
That can add up to 2 to 5% of your total salary. It's a real reduction of your dollarized income.
A massive hit. And the second risk is that the dollar is not immune to crises. If the Fed injects excessive liquidity or the euro strengthens suddenly, the dollar can lose value against other major currencies. If your saving goal is quoted in euros, for example, a temporarily weak dollar yields you less.
That's the objective risk. Now for the subjective risk, the psychological effect.
This is one of the most overlooked risks, Alex. Personal dollarization necessitates strong mental discipline. When the dollar soars, you feel euphoria. You feel smart. But when it stabilizes or drops slightly, what happens? It generates panic.
I agree. You panic and you think, oh no, I need to convert it all back to local currency now before I lose more value.
Exactly. That emotional reaction can lead to impulsive, erroneous, and costly decisions.
You have to treat the dollar as a long-term saving vehicle, not a trading asset you panic sell every time there's a small dip.
Partner, a 70-30 rule.
So, we need strategy to manage these traps and emotions. Who actually benefits the most from this whole endeavor? The profile that benefits the most is the remote professional or freelancer working for foreign clients who lives in a country with high inflation. Their income is pegged to the global economy, but their expenses are local and cheaper. This allows them to strategically decide when and at what exchange rate to convert their dollarized salary.
They have a disassociated cost of living. They can optimize.
Yes, in contrast, if you're a local employee paid in USD, but your local expenses are high, you're losing more of the benefit every month when you convert. We need to apply the economist's logic and calculate our personal consumption index.
How does that work?
If 70% of your